even though visually we are together, shoulder to shoulder, we're together with many people who have joined us on Zoom currently, mindfulness teachers that have gathered on Zoom, and mindfulness teachers that have gathered on our Facebook group. So we don't sit alone, and we don't know who we'll be sitting with in these sessions as they're recorded. So again, a heartfelt welcome for joining me, and I think it might be best if I allow you to introduce yourself rather than my trying to explain to others who I feel you are, and then I'll take it from there.
Thank you, Allan. And first of all, thank you for this very grounding and settling meditation in the beginning, because it was really helpful to kind of just bring me here and to center. And I also want to thank you for inviting me as a guest and giving me a voice as a fairly new mindfulness teacher. The way I view it is that appearing here is my contribution towards making this vision happen that you have for this community. And since you have given so much to me, and this community, this whole community has given so much to me in the past year, I felt this was one way of giving back. So I am a Canadian mindfulness and MBSR teacher, and leading workshops both in the workplace setting, in the community setting, and then, of course, MBSR programs. And I can certainly talk more about my training background if you'd like, but we'll see where you take us.
Okay, well, thank you. You've already taken us to a place that I didn't expect to go, so thank you for your expression of gratitude. And as a valued community member of ours, it's been wonderful to learn about your journey and some of your work. The way I view these sessions as unfolding with guests is more or less in 3 segments. The first being a look at what brought you here, your path to becoming a mindfulness teacher, and that then moving into what's here for you presently, your work within your programs in the community, and then opening it up to let's, for lack of a better way of putting it, a 40,000-foot view that you might have of the field, which really can encompass a lot of different directions that you might choose to take us in. So let's begin at the beginning. Where did you find this passion for becoming a mindfulness teacher or moving into mindfulness practice? What inspired you?
So I guess just as you and Mark kind of brought this up last time, for many of us, it probably goes back to childhood. And just kind of in a short recap, it probably started with my dad. I come from a tiny Nordic country, Estonia, and that was occupied by Soviet Union the entire time that I grew up there. And I left in 1990 when I was 20, and the country only gained its independence 1 year after that, so I never saw that new era. But for many Estonian people, nature is kind of their religion. So we worship trees and land and special markers on the land. Mm-hmm. And it was my dad who taught me to see all these little things in the nature. So just one of the little glimpses that I always remember is me walking hand in hand with my dad. And I was probably 5, 6, 7, and this was like an ongoing routine we had, walking through the forest trail in a summer house to the next farm where we got fresh cow's milk. And so we would pick up this container of warm, freshly milked cow's milk, and we'd bring it home. And then we would pour it in a bowl of wild strawberries and blueberries that we picked during the day. And we'd eat that cow warm milk with those strawberries and blueberries. And I don't know if you know what wild strawberries taste like, but completely different flavor than garden strawberries. So basically, just all these little details that my dad was always drawing my attention to, like, look at this plant, look at the sky, look at that tree. Did you notice that? And it really stayed with me. And, as we go through life, we forget about it. But for me and for many, I know comes a time when we kind of return to that. So that was the past.
Oh, that's so beautiful that you credit your dad and yum. That sounds so delicious. Being an MBSR teacher, I move into this direction, and I didn't plan on it. I don't plan on these sessions being one of personal inquiry. But if I might, I'm curious, as you describe that, what is here for you now? What's present?
I suppose appreciation for what has been and what is now. Yeah.
Beautiful. So would it
What
be
is,
safe to
what is
say?
here for you? What is
Well,
here for
this
you, Allan?
question, yeah, well, this yummy feeling and just this wonderful sense of how, it's your dad who, and I don't want to put these words to it, so I want to ask it as a question in a way. And reflecting back, is it your dad that in some way is the inspiration?
Possibly, yes. And
Yeah.
there's also, whether it's my dad or something else, I feel like there is this thread that kind of carries through my
Yes.
life from my childhood to now. That thread, again, that sometimes we forget and lose touch with. But if I really look through the past and present, I see that thread that I'm following.
Oh, thank you. I have such an appreciation for moving into this personal sharing with our first few moments together as the first guest on these sessions, because I think it helps set a tone to how all of this is open for our dialogue in a way that moves us beyond the rote, this is my training, this is my experience, this is my professional hat. So I really welcome the transparency and I'm grateful for it. So as you took this thread of inspiration from your dad and however else it might have occurred, and you moved into practice, what did that look like?
Yeah, so it was 2015 when I was going through a personal health scare, which seems to be kind of a catalyst for many people and starting to ask existential questions. And that brought me to mindfulness and, starting with just consuming everything I can, reading, listening, and practicing mindfulness on my own. And then thinking that this was my personal thing that I did, very personal thing. And then in my workplace, one of the directors asked me if I would like to train to be a workplace mindfulness facilitator. And I just immediately said yes. And that was in 2016. So they brought in an external trainer, Wendy Kwan from the Calm Monkey, whom and with whom
Yes.
I keep close touch with. And I took the training to implement the grassroots mindfulness program within an organization. And something that you said, Alan, was start where you're at when it comes to building a mindfulness community. So that's exactly what I did. There were about 4 or 5 other facilitators during the first year, and then they all dropped off. And I continued carrying that on, that initiative, for the next 5 years, and I just wouldn't let go of it. And yeah, so during those 5 years, this little mindfulness initiative just evolved quite organically. Um, and, I ran weekly lunchtime mindfulness sessions. For a while, I ran 2 weekly sessions in 2 different office locations. So I was running from one location to another. I also created a company internal Yammer group to share resources and to connect. I had over 90 people signed up for reminders to come to the sessions. And I had meetings with HR and presented proposals for executive leadership to maintain and grow the initiative. And the issue was that the individuals in the HR and the leadership whose idea this originally was had left the organization and changed positions. And there was no longer any support. And really, what I learned from this experience was that, as we know, some organizations are simply not ready for this. And I have to know when to step back from it and see where I am most needed. And like, especially if you're an internal mindfulness champion, sometimes we do so much, to the point of burnout on the side of our desk, in addition to our day job. And maybe we hear messages like, if you only talk to the right people, if you only presented this in the right way, or if you just showed them the ROI the right way, then it would all happen. And I think we know that many organizations are simply not ready for this yet, just like many people are not ready for it yet. And really, it has to start with the organizational culture.
Yes. Yes. That's what I found to be true in the workplace settings that I've either looked at bringing mindfulness into when I was at the UCSD Center for Mindfulness, or with the teachers that I've spoken with who talk about this needing to be more of a shift culturally from the top down and accepted in that way within the organization. So this leads me to so many questions I'm sitting with. Being a Canadian, and we have a comment from another fellow Canadian colleague of ours, Jesse Smith, it leads me, and let me tell you my intention here. One of my dreams within these sessions is to, in whatever way we can, unite the different regions, the different teaching organizations, the different pockets of associations that exist. So I think it would be wonderful for people to hear just a little bit of where you took your training in Canada.
Yes, I would be glad to share it. And that's a really good question, because that was a very important point for me when I was considering continuing my training after the workplace facilitation. Because I did want to stay within the Canadian system, since that's where I am. And I was very aware of all the different training programs offered in the US and other places. And specifically, I was hoping to find something that's offered at a university, because I also wanted to support this mindfulness being taught in the university. Um,
Yes.
And so when I did discover that the University of the Fraser Valley here in British Columbia offered this course, and this was the very first year that they were offering this course, Mindfulness-Based Teaching and Learning, I just jumped on that. So that's they offered a graduate certificate in the mindfulness-based teaching and learning, and I had some wonderful teachers, Shauna McPherson and Patricia Rockman. You might know her from the Center for Mindfulness Studies in Toronto.
Yes.
They were the teachers in this program, and I think all of us who went through that program, we felt like it gave us a very strong foundation, all coming from different backgrounds and healthcare, correctional settings, education, business, corporate. So everybody kind of brought different backgrounds and really learning to build mindfulness programs for different settings. And then, of course, just following that up with MBSR training, which was optional, but I'm so glad that I did through the Center for Mindfulness Studies. And my goal is now to continue the advanced MBSR teacher training when I'm ready for that through them as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I had the great pleasure of co-teaching there with a teacher training with Susan Woods a few years back, and they're doing great work. As there's so much wonderful work being done in Canada, and it'd be wonderful if we heard more about that. So maybe this is one view in, and it leads me to think about this second portion of how we get connected with centers in our professional training. And then we move out into the world. In this case, you were in the world of a corporate setting that was open to mindfulness. So you had that. And then within those trainings, we discover something that it's not center-centric. It's practice and cushion-centric. And our work moves from out of our being on the cushion, and in so many ways, we become our own center. So it's my understanding to some degree, which I'd like you to invite you to talk towards, how moving from that corporate mindfulness setting is now manifesting in your work in the way that it is within the community as your own center, as you might also continue your workplace programs at the same time. What's here now, in other words, for you and your work?
Yeah, thank you, Allan. Yeah, so specifically to what evolved in the workplace, in the beginning of 2021, I moved that group into a virtual setting, obviously because of the pandemic, but also because and that was a big step to actually do that, to let go of those 5 years.
Sure.
But I realized that those people actually found, I started offering these sessions in the evening outside of work hours. And those people actually felt much more relaxed and free to come to these sessions because they didn't have the pressure of getting back to their desks and still their minds on the work. And so, in that sense, it worked out well. You're right. I still continue offering workshops for organizations when there is invitations for that. Mm, What excites me now is stepping into the world with more transparency, not hiding behind my fear and shame and apprehension. So it's taken a lot of inner work for me last year and continuing now to come to this. But for some reason, in the beginning of this year, this image of myself when I was 20 years old, stepping off the plane in Montreal with literally just a penny in my pocket and totally trusting that things would work out, this came to my mind and also to my body. And I was literally feeling the energy that she had. So ready to take life on, willing to take chances. So, yeah, not knowing what the future brings, but being totally okay with that. So what I've done is at the end of the last year, I redesigned my website with the intention of expressing myself with more transparency. I launched my next MBSR course, and I had an orientation session yesterday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I said yes to being here, even though it was scary. And I was hired to teach MBSR at a local college in the springtime. So, yeah, and nurturing my own mindfulness community that grew out of the workplace. It's a small group that's meeting now for the 6th year. And yeah, something wonderful that came out of the group this first session in January was that the participants asked if we could spend an extra 15 minutes in the beginning of the session just to connect with each other. So that made me think like, okay, something is working, like there is definitely a connection happening here between the participants. So all
Yes,
good things starting this year off.
yes, wonderful. So that 20-year-old who stepped off the plane with no money to speak of is an inspiration and here now in a new iteration of boldness and courage and stepping forward. And I can really relate to that as I begin these sessions. What I would like to know is if you could, at this point, take that courage as it's manifesting now, and of course, this is a step by step process. So, not so much to get literally ahead of ourselves, but in the way of inspiration for ourselves and others to dream. What, and this is this 40,000 foot view portion that we're moving into. What would you like to see using your inspiration to its greatest ability to manifest within you to create whatever dream you're about to identify for yourself in the mindfulness field or life?
Yeah, my hope is to step into the mindfulness work more fully, even in the sense that I currently still hold a day job and I juggle both. And I would really like to fully devote all my energy to this work. Um, because of the pandemic, obviously, so many things are changing so fast that we don't really know what is going to come out of it. But we do know about the mental health pandemic now and what's coming. So, contributing to that work as much as possible is my hope and wish in whatever way it shows up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. What would you say to inspire others who want to begin in workplace programs and want to work in the field in the way that you have kind of moved into it and know it.
Yeah, I would definitely say take care of yourself. Be aware of your own, stress level and well-being. Where is this taking you? But certainly, I mean, clearly, if an organization is on board and it's coming from top down, like you said, that is wonderful. And I congratulate you if you are in that setting. And there is so much good that you can do. And if it is at the grassroots level that you are trying to make this happen, then certainly so much growth, I think personal growth comes out of doing this as well. I am here today because of all these participants in the workplace who came to my sessions and from whom I learned. So, yeah, and allowing it to grow organically, and again, taking care of yourself as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Külli. Thank you. I think we could open it up for questions and see if we have any questions or comments, either from our Facebook live group or our Zoom session.
Hey, Alan, we've got a question coming in on the chat.
Okay, thank
Looks
you.
like this is for Külli. How do you overcome barriers or those resistant to mindfulness being mainstream?
Good question.
Yeah, good question. I think this is something we as mindfulness teachers face every day. I even had a conversation with my 16-year-old son who has really discovered mindfulness about this. And even from a youth point of view, the understanding of what is mindfulness and what the benefits are and everything, he said that there are so many misconceptions about it. And we kind of were talking about it. Okay, well, what do you think should happen? Do we need to change the name mindfulness because it has just become like a catchphrase for so many different things? Or do we need to educate people? And I mean, we agreed, yes, we just need to educate people really about what this is. So overcoming obstacles, yeah, finding the ways, making it accessible for people and educating them is my view.
Well, hopefully we're playing a role in that right now, in this heartfelt connection. The education flows in so many ways and is so important because of the misconceptions that you're speaking towards and that's being asked about. I don't think changing the name would relieve any misconceptions. So thank you for that answer. So we're living into the flow of questions that may or may not appear as our first guest. We're not quite sure how they will appear, if at all. And if they don't, that's okay also. This sense of being Canadian and a sense of being an immigrant to Canada is striking to me. as someone kind of a little bit in I don't know what the right word is, but with the work beginning at the UMass Center for Mindfulness with John and the way that we're presenting programs now, of course, this all began far, far away across oceans. But in the way that we know our mindfulness programs moving from MBSR and at UMass, there's a certain view that I think for a long time, and in some ways still has us a little bit without as much of a global perspective as now exists out there as this has moved into the world in so many ways in so many countries. So what is your view in terms of moving past borders, especially this border that seems to exist between the US and Canada in ways I would not skillfully name, but sense it when I see it? Do you have any thoughts towards that?
Yeah, I think it's true. I sense that here in Canada, in many ways, we are a little bit behind when it comes to the acceptance of bringing mindfulness programs, let's say, into the education system or even business setting or really anywhere. And then, of course, government, we see what's happening in the UK, and there's a lot of things, I think, to learn from there. So I don't know exactly when or how things are going to develop, but my hope is that things are going to open up more here in Canada as well. And truly, we see that happening across the world, and especially maybe even with this connection that we have now, virtual connection through the pandemic, maybe this is opening up. I mean, people are joining training programs from all over the world. This might help.
It's so true. I think this is part of it. I'm in Zadar, Croatia. You're in Canada. Mark and Sing to the Mountain Studio is in San Diego. And we do have our global participants. So, Mark, welcome.
Yes, we're getting several questions in through the Zoom. I had a technical challenge to let you know that earlier. You ready for them?
I am. However, I want to honor everybody's time, so we can run over a little bit. Let's take a couple of questions, and we'll be pithy with it.
Okay, so we got three pending from Zoom, and then there's one on the Facebook.
Okay, well, let me turn. Let me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mark. Let me turn the clock over. Külli, can you stay a little longer past our scheduled time?
Yes.
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay, so the first one, this is from the Zoom chat. How ready are people in the workplace to meet uncomfortable feelings, and how do you handle the emotional reactions in the workplace?
I think workplace in that sense is no different. I mean, we can also ask how ready are people to face uncomfortable feelings in their personal lives as well. Of course, in the workplace, there are so many additional factors. And in fact, when I was running this program, I became so curious about the workplace factors and the workplace culture that I started by taking a workplace wellness course at a Simon Fraser University, and then I took advanced certificate in psychological health and safety at the University of Fredericton, because I became so curious listening and observing to my participants and observing these factors, psychosocial factors happening in the workplace, which could be the workload, um, communication from the leadership, unclear expectations. So there is a lot, and it is good to be aware of those factors definitely when designing programs for the workplace.
Great.
Thank you.
And another one from Zoom. Can you say more about your upcoming position at the university? Did you get this opportunity through personal connections or some other way?
Sorry, I didn't quite get the beginning of the question.
Can you say more about your upcoming position at the university?
Oh, yes. So this is at a local college, Ashton College, and they posted a job posting for MBSR instructor. And I applied and they hired me. I am still seeing how this is going to work out, and I have a lot of questions about teaching MBSR in that setting because they are viewing it more as just another. It's a continuing education program, but with MBSR there are a lot of other considerations. So I am in conversation with them, making sure that all these considerations are taken into account and seeing how things turn out.
And two more on Zoom. How can we gauge a corporation's readiness for these types of mindfulness initiatives?
I think it's good to have a conversation. So if you are brought into an organization, and often what I see is just, can you lead us for a 1 hour lunch and learn or do a 1 hour intro workshop? And I really try to engage in a conversation to find out what are their intentions behind doing that. And is there any appetite to extend this into the year? So either having additional workshops or have an ongoing kind of a weekly practice, because as we know, in a 1 hour workshop, that is not really going to stay with people for long. And then if possible, also getting a feeling of the workplace culture and the psychosocial factors there, because truly, I think if some of those things are at a not very good level there, then it's almost pointless of introducing mindfulness training when there are other issues that should be addressed first. I hope that kind of answers the question.
And one more from Zoom. What do we say to people who believe that it is religious in serving that religion?
Okay, wow. Go for it, Külli.
I just stick to, what we say with MBSR, that this is a non-secular program, educational, for me, non-clinical, and it's accessible for people from all backgrounds, and it doesn't seem to be an issue. And the same applies for workplace programs, very important to make that clear.
Okay, and we've got one on the Facebook side. I can just put it up on the screen. I'm asking about being connected in Canada, mindfulness teacher community. Are there any groups I can connect to that you know about?
Yeah, so one that comes to my mind right away is the, is it called Mindful, Allan, with Michael Apollo?
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, I was just going to mention that. Yeah, the mindful Society Global Institute.
Right.
Wonderful, wonderful organization. I hope to have Michael on here with us at some point. Yeah.
And in fact, that's how I discovered Allan, as he did a guest appearance there.
Yeah. Thank you. Mindful Society Global Institute in Toronto. And they do so much. They have weekly sessions and monthly themes. So wonderful to become a member. And I was scanning to look for others in Canada. There's the Ottawa Mindfulness Clinic. I don't know if you're familiar with Lynette and her husband Frank, who've been doing a lot of work in Ottawa. And
yeah,
several
and
others.
I think also just discovering these smaller communities that are maybe not so well known. Yeah, so it might be just a group that is not big or well known, but and we can connect, Jesse, and talk about that here on the west coast of Canada.
Wonderful. And that's actually, something I definitely wanted to ask. What is the best way for other teachers to connect with you?
Certainly through my website, there's a contact option there. The website is www.easeofbeing.ca. That's probably the best way to find me.
Yeah, and we'll have all that listed, Mark, I believe, under the description for the video.
Yeah, eventually we will, yes.
Yeah.
There's 3 more Zoom chat requests, but we can certainly carry those over away from the Facebook side, or we can answer them here, whatever you guys are up to.
Yeah, well, that's actually another opportunity. Külli, will you be able to join us back in the Zoom group?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So we can answer them in the group. And we would like to invite anybody watching on Facebook to, first of all, consider joining us on Zoom. We send out weekly invitations, and you can email me with your email if you're already a member of the Facebook group. And if you're not, you can email me if you're watching this recording at a later time, and just let me know a little bit about your teaching, and I'll respond back to you, and you can join us on the Zoom group. With that, there'll also be a time change next week that I'd like to announce, which is we will be starting these sessions at 9 o'clock Pacific time, as opposed to 9:30 as today's started. So we're shifting our time to begin at 9 o'clock Pacific time here on Facebook and on Zoom. And I think with that, first, heartfelt gratitude, Külli, for you getting us off and running. I don't know where we're running to, I like to say. Maybe we're not running. Maybe we're walking each other home. That you got us walking on this path of having a guest, and very, very grateful for that. And with that, next week we're going to have Dr. Yi-Cheng Liang, who is a wonderful, wonderful teacher, a brilliant pulmonologist, which is interesting in this time of COVID. And she has her own healthcare collective of doctors and physicians. So she'll be able to tell us all about that. And it should be very interesting to have Yi-Cheng with us next week. Hope you all can join us. So Külli, again, thank you. I will see you back on Zoom.
And thank you, Allan, for having me. And I'm really looking forward to your upcoming very interesting guests.
Thank you, Külli. I'll see you back on Zoom. Take good care, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Click down below to join our Mindfulness Teacher Community Facebook group, where you're also invited to post and share. Also, subscribe to Sing to the Mountain Studio so you don't miss out on future recordings of live sessions.